Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into an exciting scenario. What if Eren Yeager went back in time? It's going to be an epic ride, and I can't wait to explore this alternate timeline with you all. Huge shout out to Isil'zha BLZ for the concept. His link is in the description, so go check out his work and show some love. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It really helps out the channel and motivates me to bring you more amazing stories. Let's get into it. Most people think time is like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction, but I have seen the face of time, and I can tell you, they are wrong. Eren sat still as the ceremony began. A solemn expression on her face, Historia walked over to the man holding 9 medallions, one for each of the survivors of Shiganshina. As she started to place the medallions around their necks one by one, Eren found his thoughts wandering. What was it we found in that basement? Was it hope, or was it just despair? Our enemy is tremendously powerful. If nothing changes for the better soon, that calamity will only repeat itself. I'd give up my life in a heartbeat if I was certain that in doing so I could make a difference. But he looked up as she stopped in front of him. I'm not about to sacrifice Historias. I can't tell anyone about this. So, what should I do? He leaned forward and kissed her hand. The second his lips made contact with her hand, everything changed. It was a strange feeling that Eren was never able to properly describe. On the one hand, he was still kneeling in front of Historia, his lips pressed against her hand. On the other hand, he was also somewhere else, somewhere very different. As far as he could see, there was sand, stretching into the distance in all directions. Above him, the sky was a dark blue, and there were many streaks of light crisscrossing all across the sky. What is this? He lowered his gaze and saw that there were several small streams of water on the ground, and the patterns they made seemed to mirror the lights in the sky perfectly. Directly in front of him, the stream was slightly bigger, and he could see his own reflection in the water. There was a strange quality about it, something unearthly, unsettling. It flowed from left to right, but the water seemed much calmer and flatter than it should have. But what quickly grabbed his attention was that he was not alone. Sitting on the other side of the stream directly across from him was a little girl on her knees. She was wearing rags, and her head was bowed low. She was pointing silently at the stream. While Eren was tempted to ask her who she was and where they were, he decided to do as she had prompted and took a closer look at the stream. As he looked carefully at the water in front of him, he saw a blurry image of himself kneeling in front of Historia. Wait, is that, in one sense, he was sitting in this strange place, staring down into the water. In another sense, he was still back in the room with Historia, time seemingly frozen. It was like when someone is physically in one place, but is imagining themselves being somewhere else. The only difference was that here, Eren couldn't tell which one was real and which one was imaginary. He looked a little to the left in the stream and saw more blurry images. In one, he saw himself arguing with Flock before the ceremony. His eyes widened. He then looked a little to the right in the stream and saw another blurry image, one of he and his friends dispersing after the ceremony was over. Eren looked away from the streams and returned his gaze to the sky. I see. This must be what the owl described as paths. And this stream, it must be my own memories. He frowned. So what should I do? I suppose I could look into the future and see if I can learn anything useful. But there's likely going to be more pain and bloodshed down that way. I'm not sure I want to know about that. He looked to his left. I guess I could look into the past, but that wouldn't really be that useful, would it? He froze as he suddenly remembered one of the last things the owl had said to his father. If you want to save everyone, if you want to save Mikasa and Armin, you must complete your mission. Mikasa? Armin? Who are they? No idea. I wonder whose memories are these? Wait, if it's possible for memories from the future to be seen by those in the past, then could it be possible to deliberately send those memories back? Eren abruptly stood up. He glanced at the other side of the stream and was surprised to see that the girl was gone. That's strange. Who was she? He began to walk to the left, and as he walked he saw the stream begin to break apart into other, smaller streams, flowing in different directions, some overlapping. He peered carefully at one pair of streams that split off. In one, he saw an image of Armin emerging from the carcass of a titan. In the other, he saw an image of Erwin emerging from the carcass of a titan. I see. This must be where Levi made his decision. In this stream, the one that I was in, Levi chose to save Armin. But in other streams, Levi chose to save Erwin instead. He looked up, gazing at the stream that seemed to represent his memories as it faded into the horizon. So, if these different streams exist, that must mean that the past isn't fixed, it can be changed. And if that's the case, he began to jog alongside the stream, making sure to follow the correct one and ignore the ones that branched off from it. He wasn't sure where he was going, but he had a feeling that something was waiting for him at the end of the stream. After running for what felt like hours, he finally did come to something that appeared to be waiting for him. It was a massive hole. The water from the stream flowed up out from it like a reverse waterfall, creating an unnatural and unsettling effect. As Eren peered down the hole, he could see water flowing up from the hole, but he couldn't see the bottom, only a darkness deep below the ground. He frowned. I wonder, is this what I think it is? If it is, then maybe I can change things for the better. But it looks like if I jump down, there's no going back. He paused for a moment. A part of him was still kneeling in front of Historia, his lips pressed against her hand. He was sure if he concentrated hard enough, he would leave the strange place and be back in the real world. But as he thought of all those who had died because of him, he felt his resolve harden, and after only a moment of hesitation he leaped down into the hole. The darkness rushed up to meet him, and he passed out before he reached the bottom. The 9 titans all have their distinct qualities, including the attack titan that dwells within me. It is even able to peer into the memories of future successors. In other words, it has the ability to foresee the future. Eren abruptly felt himself on solid ground again. He opened his eyes and found himself looking at a row of people dressed in military cadet uniforms. He glanced back and forth and realized that there were several rows of people, one of which he was standing in. Who the hell are you? Armin Arlert of Shiganshina District, sir. Eren was startled by the sudden voices and looked around for their source. Before long, he spotted Shadis and Armin, the latter shaking slightly as he was interrogated by the former. Eren's eyes widened. Did it really? And why did you join the military? To aid in humanity's victory, sir. That's wonderful. We can feed you to the titans. Eren had to fight the urge to grin and dance around. He didn't know how, he didn't know why, but it had worked. Somehow, he had been sent back in time, all the way back to his first day of cadet training. Not quite as far back as he would have liked, but still far enough back to make a difference. Eren looked around and spotted a number of familiar faces. Near Armin was Mikasa, and while she had never been emotive, she did look noticeably less solemn than she had appeared after the Battle of Shiganshina. There was Jean, who was about to get yelled at by Shadis, and next to him was Marco. Eren's breath caught in his throat. That's right, all of them. All the people who died. Their tragic, often pointless deaths, many of which were my fault. They've all been undone. They're alive again. I'm not the only one who's been given a second chance.
Eren's Gaza Ardanat.
And I will not waste this chance. After spotting Marco, Eren inexplicably found his eyes drawn to other previously deceased comrades. He saw Mina, Myliers, and Nick all standing not too far apart. Eren lowered his eyes. It's my fault they died. I was so stupid. Whatever happens this time, I won't let anyone else die because I was reckless. Eren then noticed Thomas. Hopefully that abnormal won't get to you this time. Hannah and Franz. Maybe things will work out for them this time. And Samuel, what happened to him last time? I don't remember. And then Eren spotted them. Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie. Eren clenched his teeth, but tried not to show any outward discomfort. So, if everyone else is back, then so are they. I guess I should have expected that. Still, this time around, I'm not completely in the dark like I was last time. They're in for quite the surprise. Eren had to withhold a snicker as he saw that. Once again, Sasha had the potato. A few yards away, Eren noticed Connie, who was up next to be interrogated by Shadis. Remembering what happened last time, Eren briefly caught Connie's eye and subtly raised his right hand. When Shadis called on him, Connie caught himself and saluted in the correct manner. After hearing Connie's reason for joining the military, Shadi's looked like he was about to make a scathing comment, but abruptly stopped when he heard a munch, and immediately noticed Sasha eating the potato. All at once everyone stilled, astonished at the brazen act. Shadi's began walking toward her. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Sasha didn't seem to realize he was talking to her, and took another bite. "Hey you, I'm talking to you. Who the hell are you? You are officially on my shit list." Sasha hastily swallowed and snapped into a salute. "Sasha Browse from Dopper Village on the south side of Wall Rose, sir." Shadi's towered over her. "What is that you're holding?" "A steamed potato, sir. I found it in the kitchen looking good enough to eat, and so I couldn't help myself." Shadi's looked incredulous. "So you stole it? But why eat it here?" Sasha responded. "Potatoes are best eaten warm, and I thought it would be a shame to let it get cold, sir." "But why? Why would you choose to eat it now?" At this point Eren was nearly cracking a rib trying to not laugh. The first time around the situation had seemed extremely serious, with everyone shocked and afraid about what Shadi's would do, and it was only later that the incident seemed funny. But after everything he had been through, and the far more serious and traumatic events he had endured, Eren suddenly found this moment to be completely comical. Afraid that he would burst out laughing if Sasha gave the same response as last time, Eren decided to intervene. "Sir!" Everyone's eyes swiveled over to Eren, who had raised his voice and snapped into a salute. "She says she's from Dopper. Dopper is a small hunting village in the mountains. Such places have gone through food shortages lately, sir." Shadi's rounded on him, and Eren felt relieved, knowing he wouldn't be tempted to laugh with the instructor right in front of him. Shadi's narrowed his eyes. "And just who the hell are you?" "Eren Yeager, from Shiganshina district, sir." "And why did you join?" "To eradicate the Titans from the earth," Eren said quietly but firmly. Shadi's looked mildly impressed. "A noble purpose, but ultimately futile if you stick up for losers like Browse." Shadi's began to walk away, but Eren wasn't going to let that stand. "Sir." Shadi's glanced back at him. Eren continued, "With all due respect, there are no losers in the 104th squad." Eren felt everyone around him straighten up slightly, and he could have sworn he saw a pleased glint in Shadi's eye. "Well, you've certainly got faith in your fellow cadets. And since you're so eager to show it, you and Browse have a choice. Either run laps until you collapse, or miss out on chow." Sasha whimpered upon hearing the second option, and Eren grinned. "Looks like we'll be running those laps, sir." Shortly after the opening ceremony concluded, Eren and Sasha began their laps. There was a time where Eren would have found the laps an irritating waste of time, but now he felt grateful, as they gave him a chance to think. "So this is really happening. I've gone back in time. I have no idea how or why, and something tells me I never will. But that's not really important. I need to think carefully about what I'm going to do this time." Eren glanced at the ground thoughtfully as he ran. Annie, Bertolt, and Reiner will most likely follow a similar course of action as last time. Their goal is to find the founding Titan. To do this, they plan to join the military police, and then destroy Wall Rose, and use the ensuing chaos and their new positions to track down the royal family. Eren grimaced. The only reason they didn't go all the way through destroying Wall Rose last time was because of me. So, how do I stop them? I can't confront them right away. While I have much better control over my Titan powers now, there's still 3 of them, and they've all had training I haven't. If I took them by surprise, I might be able to eliminate or capture them in an instant, but that's too risky. As powerful as I am, I can't do it alone." Eren glanced at Sasha, who was beginning to pant slightly, then shifted his gaze forward again. "I know I can count on Mikasa and Armin, but how do I tell them what I know? I can't tell them I came from the future. They'd think I was crazy, and even if they didn't think that, I don't want to burden them with the knowledge of that future, and all those who had to die." Eren thought back to the memories he had of his father talking with Eren Kruger, and all at once an idea came to him. "That's it. I can just say the knowledge I have comes from the memories I inherited from my father and Kruger. It's not a complete lie, and they'd have no way of knowing otherwise."
Era nazitata.
"Still, should I share what I know yet? Probably not. I'll have to share what I know eventually, but I don't want to weigh Mikasa and Armin down with it just yet. I know I can trust Erwin and the other scouts, so I'll bide my time until I can join, and then confide in them. Eren brushed a few drops of sweat off his forehead that were trying to get into his eyes. Still, how do I stop Annie, Bertolt, and Reiner from destroying Trost again? I guess I could accidentally transform during training. That would get their attention, and they'd halt their plans to destroy Wall Rose. But no, that's too risky. I don't want them to know about me, and there's no guarantees the government will let me live this time. Eren frowned. But how? How do I stop them from destroying Trost without revealing myself? And what should I do in the meantime? I think I'll avoid any major plans for now and just go along with the training again. Reiner and the others shouldn't make their move until after graduation, so I'll keep a low profile until then. I'll have plenty of time to think of a plan before that time arrives. Eren glanced back at Sasha, his eyes softening. Besides, last time around I was so focused and consumed by my goal of destroying all the Titans that I didn't really pay that close attention to those around me. This time, I'll try to be a better comrade and a better friend, especially to those who died last time because of me. Sasha noticed Eren staring at her and looked at him uncertainly. What? Is there something on my face? Eren shifted his gaze ahead again. No, just thinking. I see. After a few moments of jogging in silence, Sasha glanced at him again. Why did you defend me like that? Eren tilted his head thoughtfully. Well, there's a few reasons. For one, we're training to be soldiers, and soldiers have to look out for each other. It's life or death out there. And if we don't work together as a cohesive unit and help each other, we'll just end up as Titan fodder. Sasha nodded. I see. That makes sense. And what was the other reason?
Eren smirka.
I was trying hard to not laugh, but if you'd kept talking I'm pretty sure I would have lost it. So I interfered before it could come to that, potato girl. Sasha blushed. Oh, shut up. Don't call me that.
Eren shuklat.
Well, you better get used to it. I'm sure others will have come up with that same nickname after what happened. Sasha shook her head in exasperation. Ugh, what's the big deal? It was a really good potato. Eren's smile faded. So, why did you join? Sasha grimaced. Well, if I'm completely honest, I'm kind of hoping to get into the military police and into the interior, where it's safe and there's plenty of food. Sasha glanced at him. I bet you think that's pretty pathetic, huh? Eren shook his head. Not necessarily. There's nothing wrong with valuing your own life. Sasha blinked in surprise. Eren looked at her seriously. But if we don't stop the Titans, it's only a matter of time before there's no place left that's safe. Sasha looked away, her expression grim. After they'd completed another lap, Sasha looked back at Eren. And why did you join? Were you serious about wanting to eradicate the Titans?
Eren nudda.
Yes, I know I can't do it on my own, but that's why I'm here, to hone my skills and to find other people with the same goal. Sasha looked ahead thoughtfully, and Eren withdrew inward again, his mind buzzing with plans. After almost 6 hours of running laps, Sasha finally collapsed in exhaustion. Eren decided that one of them collapsing was good enough and carried her over to her barracks. Oh my goodness! Are you okay? Eren looked up and saw Historia walking toward him carrying a canteen of water and a loaf of bread.
Eren smilat.
I'm fine. And I'm pretty sure Sasha is fine too, just a bit exhausted. Historia smiled tentatively. Well, that's good. I brought her some food and water. Were you dropping her off at the barracks? What's going on here? Eren and Historia turned around to see Ymir walking toward them. Eren glanced back and forth between Ymir and Historia. What to do about these two? Ymir seemed most concerned about Historia's well-being, so as long as I can convince Historia to join our side, Ymir should follow. Still, I have to be careful. I need to remember, her name is Krista. Krista. If I slip up and say her real name, that would lead to a lot of awkward questions, and I don't want to have to try to talk my way out of that. Ymir looked at Historia dismissively. What's all this? You snuck out some bread and water for Potato Girl and this guy? Is this your idea of trying to be nice? Ymir smirked. Or were you trying to get on his good side? Already scouting out for a boyfriend? Historia blushed. It's not like that. They've just been running for hours, so I thought I'd bring them something.
Eren smilat tiradli.
I appreciate it, but I can probably grab something at the mess hall. Sasha could probably use those though once she wakes up.
Emir sekhet.
Well, since we're all being such nice people, I'll take Potato Girl off your hands. since you aren't allowed in the girls' barracks. Historia stepped forward. Oh yes, I'll help too. Eren handed Sasha over to Emer and Historia, who draped each one of her arms over their shoulders. Eren held out his hand. Thanks for that. My name is Eren Yeager, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your names earlier. Emer shook his hand first. The name's Emer. Eren raised an eyebrow. Emer, huh? That's an interesting name. Eren was tempted to say more, but restrained himself. Don't push it too much. Historia held out her hand next. My name's Krista Lenz. It's nice to meet you. Eren shook her hand. Yes, it's very nice to meet you too. Eren studied her carefully. The moment his skin made contact with hers, she froze, and her eyes widened. By touching her, I should have made the memories of her sister she had lost return to her, just like I did last time. Hopefully that will help her to realize that she isn't alone, and will value herself more as a result. I'm not sure if returning those memories is a good idea or not, but she has a right to them, so what the hell? Emer arched an eyebrow. Krista? You okay? Historia snapped out of her daze. Oh, I'm fine. See you later, Eren. Eren nodded, then headed back toward the mess hall. As she and Emer helped Sasha to her barracks, Historia's mind was reeling. She saw images play out in her head. Countless memories where she thought she had been all alone, suddenly had someone else present. Years' worth of loneliness and isolation suddenly seemed to disappear as her recollections were altered. What? These memories? All along I thought I was alone. But I wasn't. Frida, my big sister, she was there all along. She cared about me. But why did I not remember until now? Why did I forget? And why did these memories suddenly come back? What is happening? Oi, Krista! Historia looked up at Emer. Huh? Emer looked at her uncertainly. You've been staring off into space for 2 minutes. Something on your mind? Emer smirked. Was it that Yeager guy? Are you already crushing on him? He is pretty cute, I suppose.
Historia BLZ.
No, I wasn't thinking about that. Emer grinned. Oh, so are you not into guys? Then which girl were you crushing on? Historia's blush intensified. No, I wasn't thinking about anything like that. I was just thinking. What about? Historia glanced away. Nothing. Emer looked skeptical. Right? Well, does nothing have a name? Historia shook her head. It's not something I want to talk about. Emer held up her hands. All right, I'll stop teasing. For now. Do you think Eren has feelings for that girl? Armin looked at Mikasa, feeling startled. They'd sat down for dinner a little while ago, and Mikasa had been rather quiet, which was not unusual for her. But this was the first time Armin had heard this sort of question from her. Armin swallowed. What do you mean? Mikasa glanced down at her plate. Well, he isn't usually so protective of strangers, yet he quickly came to her defense. It just seemed rather out of the blue for him. Armin had to concede that Eren's behavior was unusual. After the training for the day was over, he and a few of the other cadets had watched as Eren and Sasha ran their laps, and Armin was surprised by how easygoing Eren seemed. Not to mention that even after several hours he didn't seem tired, or at least was doing a good job of hiding it. Armin chuckled nervously. I wouldn't read too much into it, Mikasa. Eren just met her, and I doubt he has any room for feelings of affection with all of that vengeance inside of him. Mikasa looked off to the side. You're probably right. A few minutes later, Eren burst into the mess hall, and it looked like it was taking every ounce of will he had to force himself to walk like he hadn't been running for the past 6 hours. The other cadets began to murmur amongst themselves when they saw Eren, but Eren didn't seem to pay any mind to them. His face brightened up when he spotted Armin and Mikasa, and made a beeline for their table. Hey guys! He nodded at Mikasa appreciatively as she passed him a bowl of stew and a loaf of bread. Thanks, Mikasa. I'm freaking starving. Mikasa looked at him carefully. I thought you were supposed to run until you collapsed. Eren shrugged as he tore into the bread. Sasha did, and I figured that was good enough. I helped her back to her barracks until Emer and H-. Eren froze and hastily amended his statement. Emer and Krista took her off my hands, so I came back here. Armin frowned. So why did you stick up for her? You've been acting a little odd since the opening ceremony. Eren swallowed a mouthful of bread before answering. Well, Armin, we're soldiers now, and a soldier is only good as the other members of his unit. If we don't have each other's backs, we'll wind up dead when we face the Titans. Armin looked puzzled. I see. That's a rather mature view. Eren's reasons made sense to him, but Armin was still rather bewildered that Eren had thought something through like that. Maybe he was finally growing up?
Eren smirka.
Besides, I'm sure Sasha would have said something even stupider if I'd let things go on. So you're not infatuated with her? Mikasa said, a statement rather than a question.
Eren snorted.
What? Nah, Browse isn't really my type. I mean, sure, she's pretty enough, I suppose. But so are you, Mikasa, and I've been hanging around you for years. Armin was stunned by the casual compliment coming out of Eren's mouth, and he could have sworn that, for a brief second, Mikasa had actually blushed.
Eren shugja.
Besides, I came here to hone my Titan killing skills, not flirting with girls. Armin noticed Mikasa's posture relax slightly, and began to wonder if her question hadn't been as out of the blue as he initially thought. Hey! The three of them looked up to see two of the other cadets approaching their table. Connie and Marco, Armin recalled. Marco looked at them curiously. Didn't you say you were from Shiganshina?
Eren nudda.
Yeah, that's right. All three of us are. Connie leaned forward excitedly. So, you were there on that day, right? Eren looked down gravely. Yeah, we were. Before long, a larger number of cadets had made their way over. Mikasa slipped away to a less crowded table, and Armin cursed himself for not doing the same. He knew this many people pestering Eren about the day his mother died would almost certainly lead to a massive blow-up, and he didn't want to be anywhere near it. Eren looked up mildly annoyed. Yeah, I told you I saw the colossal Titan. The other cadets began to murmur amongst themselves. Thomas leaned forward. So, how tall was he? Eren took a sip of water. Tall enough to peek over the wall. Really? I heard he stepped over the wall completely. Yeah, that's what I heard too. Eren shook his head. Nah, he was big, but not that big. I doubt we'll ever see a Titan as large as that. Mina looked eager. What about the armored Titan?
Eren shugja.
That's what they call it. But it didn't look that different from a normal Titan to me. Then, what are the normal Titans like? Eren paused and swirled his spoon around the stew thoughtfully. Marco held up a hand. Maybe we should cut it out with the questions. I'm sure there are some things he'd rather not talk about. Connie winced. Oh man. Sorry about that, we were just… Eren smiled softly. No, each is okay. I'd probably do the same in your position. Eren looked at them all seriously. The normal Titans are… Well, if I said horrifying or terrifying, that wouldn't even begin to come close to describing what they were like. They are the single most fear-inducing thing I can think of. To be perfectly honest, I don't want to ever see one again. Armin looked at the gathered cadets, and he could see a lot of them had taken Eren's words to heart, and Armin began to worry that many of them would drop out. But before he could voice his concern, Eren continued. However, I know that in order to take back what we lost, I'll have no choice but to face them again. And that's why I came here, to learn the necessary skills I need to fight the Titans and to be able to overcome my fears. If we don't fight back, it's only a matter of time before the Titans finish us off for good, and I won't let that happen. The fear began to bleed out of the cadets' eyes to be replaced with confidence, and Armin was impressed. Well, it seems Eren has quite the gift for inspirational speeches. And I thought I was just impressed by him because I was his friend. Eren grinned. I'm going to join the scouts, and once we drive the Titans out, we'll finally be free. Eren placed his hand on Armin's shoulder. And when that happens, we'll explore the whole world, won't we, Armin? Armin nodded. Right? Oi, are you freaking nuts? The crowd parted to reveal a brown-haired young man, whose name Armin remembered was Jean. Eren looked at Jean. Maybe a little. Why? Are you planning to run from the Titans and join the military police? Jean smirked. Yeah, that's right. I say it how it is, unlike some people who talk like they've got balls of steel right after pretty much admitting that they piss their pants whenever they see a Titan. Eren feigned obliviousness. Oh, was that a shot at me? Well, to each their own. But I'd like to see how you'd react to seeing your mother devoured by a Titan right in front of you. A big macho man like you would probably run in and kill it with your bare hands. Right? The flippant way Eren spoke about his mother's death sent Armin's mind reeling, and he could see that Mikasa had, for her, a gobsmacked look on her face. The other cadets fidgeted and murmured uncomfortably, while Jean appeared to be speechless. Eren slowly stood up and walked over to where Jean sat. I suggest that you take the time to learn about someone first before you start insulting their ideals or beliefs, or else you'll end up sticking your foot in your big stupid mouth. What was that? Jean flared up and stood up at once. Armin heard Eren chuckle softly before responding. You're a funny guy, Jean. I meant no disrespect or to say that you're doing the wrong thing, and I apologize if I came across that way. Eren held out his hand. Jean looked down at it uncertainly before reluctantly clasping it. Yeah, I'm sorry as well. Armin was about to follow Eren when he saw Mikasa brush past Jean, whose face became even more bewildered than it had during his confrontation with Eren. He watched in amusement as Jean followed her to the door before the brown-haired young man called to her. Hey! Mikasa turned back toward him, and Jean seemed to fumble over his words. I've just never seen someone like you. You look different from the rest of us. You have very pretty black hair. Mikasa looked at him disinterestedly. Thanks. She then walked away and headed out to find Eren. Jean snapped out of his daze after a few seconds and rushed out onto the porch. Armin followed him and found him staring after Mikasa, who had just caught up with Eren. Mikasa frowned at Eren. You okay?
Eren siga.
I'm fine. It's all right. You tend to do stupid things whenever anyone brings up that day. Mikasa replied quietly. I just wanted to make sure. Eren smiled at her softly. Well, I can't get mad at you for watching my back. Sorry, I snapped. Mikasa looked surprised at Eren's answer. Meanwhile, Armin could almost see the cogs turning in Jean's head as his face melted into a look of bitter disappointment. As Connie walked out onto the porch, humming contentedly, Jean reached out and wiped his hand on the back of Connie's shirt. Hey! Connie whirled around. What the hell did you wipe on my shirt? Jean looked at Connie dead-eyed. My faith in humanity. Armin was barely able to duck past them and away from the porch before he burst out laughing. Before long, he managed to catch up to his two friends, still letting out a snort here and there. Eren glanced back at him. What's got you in such a good mood? Armin managed to stifle his mirth and shrugged. I don't know. I've just got a good feeling about the next 3 years. Eren nodded and faced forward. Me too, Armin, me too. They walked in silence for a little while, listening to the chatter of other cadets as they made their way to the barracks. Without warning, Eren reached up and began playing with a few loose strands of Mikasa's hair, much to her and Armin's surprise. It's getting pretty long now, isn't it? Eren remarked. Mikasa looked ever so slightly self-conscious. Do you think I should cut it? It might get in the way of the 3D maneuver gear. Eren chuckled. Like that scarf won't? It'll be all right. I like your hair just fine as it is. If it actually does get caught, you can always cut it then, right? Mikasa nodded slowly. Right? She stopped walking once they reached one of the wooden buildings. My barracks are here. Good night, you two. Be sure to get lots of rest for tomorrow. Armin nodded. Okay. I have a feeling we'll need all the energy we can get tomorrow. After they parted ways, Eren and Armin found their way to their bunks, which were across from each other on the bottom. Once it was quiet, and everyone had appeared to drift off to sleep, Armin spoke up. Eren, are you awake? He had to wait a few seconds before Eren responded. Yeah. What's up? You've been acting a little off today. It's nothing bad. It's actually kind of refreshing to see you not explode at every slight. But why now? Armin strained to see Eren in the dim lighting. After a moment of silence, Eren responded. All this fanfare about training has got me thinking. Thinking about some things I'd rather not think about, but thinking all the same. We're going to be spending the next 3 years with these people. During that time, I have no doubt that we'll be forging some bonds and friendships that aren't easily broken. Eren shifted slightly. And at the end of it all, we'll be fighting titans. And titans kill. That's what they do. It isn't a question of if someone is going to die, but who is going to die. Like Mom. Armin swallowed. Then why not shun all the bonding, if you think it would hurt too much? Eren shook his head. That would be stupid. You can't have happiness without at least the risk of sadness. I swore I would kill all of the titans, but I'm just one person. Realistically, I'll never be able to do it all on my own. I need to trust in the strength of others, just as they'll need to trust in the strength of me, and it's through that trust that we'll fight back and reclaim what we lost. I don't like the idea that some people will have to die to make that goal a reality, but I know it's inevitable. I just want to work as hard as I can to minimize the number of people who won't come back.
Eren siga.
I don't know if I'm making any sense right now. Armin shook his head. No, it does make sense. Although, I have to say, I'm a little surprised that you've thought this through as thoroughly as you have.
Eren sarugid.
Hopefully I'm starting to outgrow some of my bad habits. Eren rolled over. Good night, Armin. Good night. Armin settled down, but his mind was buzzing with thoughts for a long time, both puzzled with Eren's sudden change in attitude and anticipating the training to come, and sleep took a while to come. Early the next morning, the cadets were lined up for the aptitude test on the stationary gear. It was another test to see how fit each person was to become a soldier, and also served to weed out those who couldn't make the cut. Mikasa found herself among the first group of people to try their hand at the aptitude test. It took a minute or two, but before long she had found her balance, and was now observing the others. She noticed Armin a few yards away managing to find his balance, shaky as it was, and made sure to give him a smile of encouragement. She also spotted some of the other cadets holding themselves up quite nicely as well, including Potato Girl and the guy with the hair fetish. Or, as Eren told her to call them, Sasha and Jean. Speaking of Eren, she looked over and saw Eren stepping into the harness. He was slowly raised up into the air and abruptly flipped upside down. She gasped in shock, and several other people turned their heads in surprise. While some people had trouble keeping balance, no one else had flipped like that so suddenly. But as soon as he flipped upside down, Eren shifted his weight and flipped the right way again. Except instead of just calmly hanging there, he kept shaking, as if there was something trying to make him flip over again and he was attempting to prevent it. Shadi's walked over. Stop shaking, Jaeger.
Eren grimasa.
I'm trying, but something seems off about this gear. Shadi's frowned and gestured at the cadet standing next to the machine to lower him down. Wagner, switch gear with Jaeger. After switching gear, Eren was able to hang steady just fine. Shadi's eyed the gear critically. It seems your equipment was defective. That's why you couldn't stay still before. Still, I have to say, being able to stay upright with defective gear is quite impressive, especially for a new trainee. The cadets began murmuring amongst themselves. Mikasa's eyes widened. How was he able to do that? Shadi's glared at Eren. Don't expect any points for this though, Jaeger. Now that you've shown your aptitude, we'll be expecting even more from you. Take this gear to the supply depot for repairs. Eren saluted. Sir. Shortly afterwards, Mikasa was let down, and the next batch of trainees came up for their aptitude test. She glanced over at Eren as he headed toward the supply depot, and saw that he looked annoyed. She blinked in confusion. He passed the aptitude test and did really well. Why would he be annoyed? Did he not like all the attention? Armin trotted up to her. Nicely done, Mikasa. Mikasa smiled. And you? Armin glanced ahead. So, what's up with Eren? Mikasa frowned. I was going to ask you the same thing. He's been acting a bit off ever since yesterday. Armin nodded. Yeah, I was really surprised when he stuck up for that Potato Girl. And when they were asking him about that day, I thought he would blow up, but he took it rather well. Mikasa nodded. As she replayed the scene in her head, the more odd it seemed. Eren should have gotten more fired up about the day his mother died. At the very least, he should have gotten angry after those remarks from Jean. But instead, he was much more restrained. She began to feel slightly nervous. Is Eren finally growing up? Does he not need me to look after him anymore? Armin continued. When I asked him about it last night, he said that training made him think about the bigger picture and how we need to work together as soldiers if we're going to drive the Titans out. He even admitted that no matter how good he is or how hard he trains, he'll never be able to do it all by himself, and that he'll need to put his trust in his fellow comrades. Mikasa looked at Armin sharply. Really? He said that? Armin shrugged. I know, I was surprised. Mikasa tilted her head. Not to mention he seems to have gained a perfect sense of balance out of nowhere. They were silent for a few minutes. Armin chuckled softly. We're probably reading too much into it. Eren's still the same person. He just seems to have matured a bit at last. Mikasa nodded. Right? Still, He seems to have done it rather fast. Mikasa glanced at Armin with a sly smile. So, I noticed you staring at that bored-looking girl over there. Armin blushed. Was it that obvious? Mikasa chuckled softly. I only noticed because I've known you for so long. I suppose you could do worse. Armin shook his head. Oh, come on. It's not like I'm gonna go over there and try to woo her or anything. Mikasa had to stifle a giggle. Woo? Armin, you need to stop reading those old romance novels. Armin looked away, flustered. Oh, shut up. Mikasa looked ahead and saw Eren returning from the supply depot. That's odd. He figured out where it was that quickly? I have a pretty good sense of direction, and I'm still figuring out the layout of this place. Maybe he just got lucky. Mikasa glanced back at Armin and saw that he was once again staring at the bored-looking blonde girl. This fact did not go unnoticed by Eren. Already scouting for the future Mrs. Arlert? Armin looked sharply at Eren. Not you too.
Eren shuklat.
It's just a thought. She is rather pretty. Eren glanced at the girl, then back at Armin. Hey, why don't you go introduce yourself to her? Armin looked at Eren in shock. What? I can't do that.
Eren smirka.
Why not? I can't just walk up to a stranger out of nowhere and say, Hi, my name is Armin. What's yours? Isn't that what you did with me? I was 4, and now you're 12. That's 3 times the experience. Armin shook his head. Your logic astounds me sometimes, Eren. Mikasa spoke up. Well, look at it this way. If you talk to her, you could become acquaintances, which over time could develop into something more. And if she wants nothing to do with you, then that will be the end of it. Not much to lose, and plenty to gain. Eren nodded at her gratefully, and she could see that Armin was considering her advice. After a moment, Armin's face became serious. You're right, Mikasa. Hey, what about me? As I said, you're right, Mikasa. I'll go over and give it a try. Eren grinned. Good luck. As Armin walked toward the bored girl to introduce himself, Mikasa found herself staring at Eren. Something's different about him. I wonder what's going on in his head. Annie glanced around the training grounds, feeling bored. She'd managed to pass the test with the stationary gear no problem, and now had some time to kill while the rest of the trainees went through. She'd noticed Reiner chatting with some of the other cadets, and had to resist the urge to roll her eyes. They weren't here to make friends. Reiner was just setting himself up for disappointment if he got attached to these people. She hoped Bertolt would keep an eye on him. As for her, she intended to keep to herself as much as she could. The only thing she cared about was completing the mission and making it back home alive. Anything else was just a pointless distraction. Hi. Annie turned around to see one of the other trainees standing a few feet away. The moment she looked at him, his face became flushed, which surprised her, as it wasn't that warm out. He nervously rubbed the back of his neck. My name is Armin. I didn't catch yours before. Annie sized him up. He seemed friendly, if a bit shy, but didn't seem like the type who would cut it as a soldier. Annie, she answered shortly. Armin smiled nervously. Annie, huh? See, that's a nice name. Annie interrupted him. Why are you talking to me? Armin winced slightly. Am I bothering you? Annie shook her head. No. I'm just wondering why you decided to talk to me. Armin's face became slightly serious. Well, we're both training to be soldiers, and I thought it would be a good idea to get to know the other people here better, since we'll be depending on each other out in the field. Annie's eyes widened momentarily. I see. I suppose there is some sense in that. She shook her head. But, given what happened 2 years ago, I don't see any point in getting too attached to anyone here. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away. She didn't want to be rude, but she wanted to send a clear message to those around her and keep interactions to a minimum. Unfortunately, that message didn't seem to be getting across. Only a few minutes later, hey! Annie turned around and saw another one of the trainees standing before her. He nodded at her. Leonhardt, right? Annie tilted her head. Yes, Jaeger, right? She remembered him from yesterday. After that stupid girl had been caught with the potato, for whatever reason this guy had stood up for her. Another person who was trying to bond with their fellow cadets. Great. Eren raised his fists. Hey, spar with me. Annie looked at him incredulously. Are you serious? Eren shifted his stance. Do I look like I'm joking? Annie sighed. Fine. She walked over and within a matter of seconds he was on the ground. Annie glanced at him dismissively before beginning to walk away. Not bad. Annie turned around and was surprised to see that he was already back on his feet. Perhaps he was tougher than she thought. He gestured at her. Again, Annie felt herself beginning to feel annoyed. Why? There's no point to any of this.
Eren frowned.
Is that what you said to Armin? Annie blinked. Who? You mean that guy from earlier? He a friend of yours?
Eren nodded.
Yeah, Annie shook her head. I just told it like it is. Eren looked skeptical. Is that so? Do you really believe that though? Annie scowled. What do you mean? Eren gestured out at the training grounds. Do you really think that if these people die, their deaths will hurt less just because you didn't get to know them? Annie's eyes widened. Without warning, Eren lunged at her, and she barely moved out of the way in time. Eren continued. Some of these people will die facing the Titans. I know that's an unavoidable reality, but trying to look away from that fact doesn't make it go away. Annie kicked his leg out from underneath him and sent him to the ground again. Maybe, but if I don't let myself get attached. Eren glanced up at her. You really think you have a choice in the matter? Eren swiped his leg and sent Annie sprawling to the ground as well, much to her surprise. He looked at her seriously. Whether you like it or not, we're going to get to know each other during training. You can try to be aloof in a futile attempt to numb the future pain, but that seems foolish to me. Annie hastily stood back up, glaring at him. And what would you suggest instead? Eren stood back up as well. Relax. Enjoy your time here. Get to know the others. Have some fun. Annie scoffed. I didn't come here for fun.
Eren sarugid.
Neither did I. But that doesn't mean I intend to be serious all the time. He looked at her darkly. When my mother was eaten by a titan right in front of me, it was without a doubt the most horrific moment of my life. But the reason it was so horrific was because I loved her, and because I cherished the good times that I had with her. In other words, the pain only came because of the happier moments that preceded it. Annie was stunned into silence. Part of her felt sympathetic for his loss, but a bigger part felt guilt. It was my fault. Our fault. She quickly tried to suppress the feeling, but something about Eren's gaze made it more difficult. Eren tapped the side of his head. I may not have much life experience just yet, but I do know this. In life you have to take the good and the bad. You can't have joy without sadness. Cherish those around you while you can, because you never know when that opportunity may be lost forever. With that, Eren walked away, leaving Annie by herself with her thoughts. Armin looked up from his notebook and surveyed the landscape around them. Apart from a few forests and rock formations dotted here and there, the dry wilderness stretched outwards in every direction, with no signs of civilization in sight. Directly in front of him was Marco, riding his horse at a slow but steady pace. Beside him were Eren and Mina. Behind them was Sasha, Connie, and Krista, with Jean at the rear of the group. Marco and Eren seemed to be the only ones who were staying focused, while the others were showing various signs of fatigue and boredom. Armin faced forward again and wrote a few notes down. It was hard to believe that a year had already passed since they had started their training. It was a fairly short period of time, but so much had happened. Armin was relieved to find that he was able to keep up with the others when it came to the physical demands of training to become a soldier. He was still better in the classroom, and he knew he would always be one of the weaker members, but he was grateful that he wasn't a burden, at least not so far. Eren's attitude had shifted ever since the opening ceremony, and while he and Mikasa were slightly perturbed by the change, they had to admit that they liked his new attitude much better. Eren no longer spoke about killing all the Titans and driving them out. In fact, he hardly ever talked about Titans at all anymore. Instead, he focused much more on getting to know their fellow cadets. It was thanks to him that Armin was well acquainted with Marco, Connie, and Sasha, among others, and Eren had even gotten Mikasa to become less reserved and become friends with some of the other female cadets, such as Mina and Krista. There was also Annie. Armin had been discouraged after their first exchange, but Eren had said that he would talk to her. Something Eren had said to her must have gotten through, because while she still kept to herself most of the time, she stopped being quite so aloof. Armin had tried tentatively talking to her again, and she gradually began to reciprocate. She never sought him out for conversation, but at the same time she never seemed like she wanted him to leave her alone. After several months, she even admitted that she enjoyed his company, and Armin could have sworn that he saw a slight blush on her cheeks, though it was gone so quickly that he could never say for sure. When it came to Mikasa, Armin had figured out that she had romantic feelings for Eren. He'd suspected that this was the case, but hadn't been sure until recently. He'd figured Eren would be too dense to notice, and so Mikasa would be doomed to an unrequited love until she came out and stated it. Or so he'd thought, but perhaps he had been mistaken. In addition to Eren's new friendliness toward the other cadets and the disappearance of his obsession with the Titans, another change in his personality was how he treated Mikasa. Before, he would snap and get mad whenever she tried to have his back or watched over him, saying he wasn't a little kid. But now, he not only didn't get mad, he seemed to appreciate the attention she gave him, and was much more tactful in how he talked to her and about her. Armin wasn't sure exactly what was going on in Eren's head. He didn't know if his friend had realized Mikasa's feelings for him, or if it was just another sign that he was finally growing up. But either way, it was another change that he appreciated. Another person who Armin had noticed had feelings for Mikasa was Jean. Armin felt pity for the young man, as Mikasa's heart clearly belonged to Eren, and so Jean's crush was doomed from the very beginning. Still, this fact, along with their differing views and goals, caused a friendly rivalry to develop between Eren and Jean. Eren would make fun of Jean for fleeing to the interior, while Jean would mock Eren for being so eager to be Titan Chow. About a week after training started, during one of these arguments, Eren had retorted by saying that he would give himself 10 or 11 years before he got eaten by a Titan. After that, it became a running joke that Eren would often bring up during their arguments, usually brought up whenever Jean said that he would die on his first mission outside the walls. Mikasa didn't think the joke was very funny, but the rest of the cadets found it amusing, and were impressed how Eren could nonchalantly joke about his possible death in 10 or 11 years' time. Eren's confidence made him someone just about everyone liked, and he along with Reiner were the favorites of the 104th Corps. But it wasn't just their attitude and confidence that made Eren and Reiner popular, it was also their skill. During training, they were consistently among the top best cadets, many times being the best with only Mikasa surpassing them. Their dedication served as an inspiration for the other cadets, causing many of them to try harder. Even Jean, who was only trying to get into the military police, seemed impressed by Eren, though of course he would never admit it. Armin glanced back at Eren. Today, however, Eren didn't seem like his normal self. He was much quieter and more reserved than normal, as if something was bothering him. Armin shook his head. Perhaps it was just the mundanity of the exercise they were on. Part of the 104th Cadet Corps had been split into two groups. The first group was made up of Armin, Marco, Eren, Mina, Sasha, Connie, Krista, and Jean, with Marco as the leader and Armin as the record keeper. The second group was made up of Mikasa, Thomas, Reiner, Bertolt, Annie, Daz, Nick, and Emer, with Thomas as the leader and Mikasa as the record keeper. They were to make a round trip across a distance that extended for 40 kilometers, with one group traveling along the western end and the other group traveling along the eastern end. They would reach a forest at the end, meet up and exchange information, and then loop back and return to the training grounds. The point of the exercise was to see how they were able to sustain themselves in the absence of a crisis. So far, most of the cadets just seemed bored, though they did maintain a consistent pace and listened to Marco when he gave them instructions. Armin glanced off to the side and saw a lizard walking parallel to them in a spot with more vegetation. Jean noticed it as well. "Hey, that lizard has been following us for a while now." Sasha's eyes lit up. "They're delicious, you know." Jean glanced back at her. "Oh, really?" Sasha nodded. "Yeah, my family and I used to eat them. They taste like chicken." Jean smirked. "All right then." Jean spurred his horse forward. Marco protested. "Wait," Jean called back. "If hunting for food is part of the exercise, then what's better than catching that lizard?" Historia cried. "Don't do that." Jean pulled out his blades, aimed carefully, and struck the lizard through the back, killing it instantly. Jean grinned. "Gotcha." Connie smiled. "Nice," Sasha cheered. "Woo, we'll be eating good tonight." Armin smiled at their antics and glanced back to see what Eren's reaction was. To his surprise, Eren still looked rather somber and didn't appear to be paying full attention to what was going on around him. Jean put the dead lizard with their supplies, and before long they were on their way again. As they continued their journey, Armin couldn't help but feel slightly puzzled. What was up with Eren? That night they made camp. The lizard turned out to be big enough to feed all of them, and with Sasha's help they were able to have a decent meal around a hearty campfire. Armin didn't talk much, instead just taking the time to enjoy the others' company. Marco was talking to Jean about being a good leader, which Jean seemed to take seriously. Armin knew that they were best friends, and while they both wanted to get into the military police, they wanted to do so for different reasons. Jean mainly wanted to have a decent life and get away from the Titans, while Marco wanted to fix the corruption in the interior and serve the king. Armin was glad that some of Marco's ideas seemed to be rubbing off on Jean, though part of that could have been his desire to prove Eren wrong and show he wasn't just running away from the Titans. Armin glanced at Krista, who looked a little uncomfortable. Armin could tell why. Shortly after training had begun, she and Emer had become practically inseparable, with one rarely turning up without the other. But for this assignment, they had been assigned to different groups, which took them out of their comfort zone a little. Armin smiled softly. He was sure Mikasa was going through the same thing. She rarely left Eren's side, and so being away from him even for this short exercise must be taking at least a little of a toll on her. Speaking of Eren, Armin glanced over and saw that Eren still had the same somber look on his face that he'd had all day and was staring absently into the fire. Armin scooted over next to him.
Hey Eren.
Eren turned toward him. Armin looked at him uncertainly. Are you okay? You've been unusually quiet today.
Eren smilat.
Oh, I'm fine, but Armin could tell that the smile was forced. You sure?
Eren know that.
Yeah, Armin frowned. Okay then. Before long they put out the fire and got settled in for the night. Armin's mind was active for a while, but eventually he drifted off to sleep. What the hell? Connie's yell woke Armin up like a slap to the face. Armin lurched upright and froze. They were surrounded on all sides by a group of men wearing bags on their heads and pointing guns at them. The others were now all awake and looking up at the strange men in confusion and fear. After a moment of silence, one of the men spoke. Don't move. Gather their 3D gear. Eren responded, his voice surprisingly calm. And what will you do with them? The man glanced at him, his eyes just barely visible through the holes in the bag. There are some people who will pay handsomely for them. You can't beat the Titans anyway. So what's wrong with selling some useless equipment? Eren shook his head. I disagree with your analysis of the situation, but equipment can be replaced, while lives cannot. So I'll cooperate so long as you don't threaten the lives of my friends. The man chuckled grimly. Oh, don't worry. As long as you behave, we won't kill you. The thieves gathered the 3 DMG and placed them in a wagon they had nearby. Armin tried to swallow back the fear he felt and analyzed the situation. Their horses were gone. It appeared that the thieves had cut them loose and scared them off. They outnumbered the thieves slightly, but they had no weapons, so trying anything rash would be a bad idea. Still, Armin was puzzled. Eren had seemed like something was bothering him all day, but when things suddenly became really bad, Eren acted fairly calm. He didn't understand. Before long the thieves had gathered all the gear and were pulling Krista toward the wagon. She looked frightened, but didn't oppose them, their guns keeping her from acting out. The man who appeared to be in charge looked back at the trainees. Now, just to make sure you don't follow us, we'll be taking her as a hostage. We'll release her once we're away, but if you come after us, she'll pay the price. Eren stepped forward.
No.
Everyone looked at Eren as if he was crazy. The man looked at him incredulously. Excuse me? Eren's face became serious. I'm not going to let you take her. If you must take someone, take me instead. Historia's eyes widened. Armin gasped. Eren! The man scowled. Insolent brat. Fine. But if you cause us any trouble, you're dead. Understand?
Eren know that.
I understand. Armin looked at his friend in disbelief. Eren smiled back at him. Don't worry.
Yelel befina.
Just keep your head held up high, and I know you'll see things through. The thieves bound Eren and placed him inside the wagon. A moment later, they were gone, and the members of the 104th were standing still in the now quiet and empty forest. Connie grimaced. Damn it, Jean scowled. I guess that bastard wasn't just all talk. Shit, Krista whispered. He sacrificed himself for me. Why? Sasha looked at Marco uncertainly. What do we do now? Marco sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know. Should we go after them? Or should we go back to the training grounds and report what's happened? Mina shook her head. I'm not sure. What do you think, Armin? Mina looked at him when he didn't answer. Armin looked thoughtful. Something about Eren's parting words. I think he was trying to tell me something without giving away his true intentions to the thieves. But what? What was he trying to tell me? Armin leaned against a nearby tree and looked up at the sky. When he did so, for a second he saw a glint of light within the branches. Armin blinked. What? He tilted his head back and forth. As he looked at the branch from different angles, the glint would appear and disappear depending on where he was looking from. Armin's eyes widened, and without warning he began to climb the tree. Marco exclaimed, "Whoa!" Jean looked baffled. Armin, what are you doing? Sasha called up. Be careful. Armin reached the branch where he had seen the glint of light and found a large pile of leaves sitting there. As he brushed a few aside, he realized that the leaves were covering up a large black blanket that had been draped over the top of the branch. Armin pulled the blanket off, and everyone gasped as they saw what the blanket had been hiding. Connie looked at it in disbelief. Is that? Armin nodded.
Eren tragedies.
It's almost like he knew something was going to happen, so he stashed it up here just in case. Jean folded his arms. Damn it. Now the bastard is clairvoyant too. Sasha looked at him uncertainly. What's clairvoyant mean? Jean sighed. Armin handed the gear down to Marco and then descended from the tree. Armin looked at them all with determination. Guys, I think we should go after the thieves. It's possible we might be able to take our gear back from them, but at the very least we need to make sure that Eren is okay. Jean, since you're the best with the gear, you should take it. Jean nodded. Right? So, what's our first move? Sasha spoke up. Well, the first thing we should do is find a high point where we can get a good view of the area. The thieves bustled around the campsite, gathering supplies and loading them onto wagons. The man in charge raised his voice. Hurry! As soon as we load everything up, we'll head out. Marcus nodded. The sooner they finish this job, the better. The prisoner next to him spoke up. Hey, is it all right if I take a leak over there? The boy, whose name was Eren apparently, was pointing at some bushes growing right next to the rocky formation that overlooked their camp. Marcus sighed. Fine. But no sudden moves, you got it. Eren nodded. They walked over to the rocky wall, and Eren relieved himself, while Marcus kept an eye on him, feeling bored. When he was done, Eren glanced at Marcus. So, what's your end goal? Marcus frowned. Eren gestured at the wagons. You sell the equipment, get some money from it, and then what? Sooner or later, the Titans are going to break through wall rows. The only way of stopping their advance is to fight, and to fight we need that gear. Marcus shook his head. I told you, kid, you can't beat the Titans.
Eren saruged.
Maybe we can. Maybe we can't. But shouldn't we at least try to fight for our survival? Are you really content with doing nothing and leaving your fate in the hands of others? Marcus tightened his grip on his gun. I control my own fate. Eren shook his head. When the Titans get through the wall, you don't. What will you do when there's no place left that's safe? Marcus scowled. I'll worry about that when the day comes.
Eren siga.
I see. So you're nothing more than a coward, unwilling to fight, but fine with dragging others down with you. You're pathetic. Marcus glared at him. Shut your mouth, you little shit. To prove his point, Marcus smacked Eren's head with the barrel of his gun. The young man collapsed to the ground with a grunt of pain. Marcus looked at him in disgust. You talk big, but you're just a kid. What the hell do you know? Eren looked up at him. His cheek was swollen and there was a cut on his upper lip. I don't know much, but I do know one thing. Sparks began to emanate from Eren's body. Eren looked at him darkly. I am going to take back Wall Maria, and I will destroy anyone who gets in my way. Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief and horror as Eren's entire body began to glow, and the last thing he felt was an intense heat enveloping his entire body. After about an hour of hiking, the group of trainees reached the top of the closest mountain, which gave them a better view of the surrounding area. Jean called out, There! He pointed toward a column of smoke that was a few miles away, near a rocky formation within the forest. Armin peered at it. Smoke. That must be where their camp is. Marco stepped forward. Let's head over there. Jean nodded. Right. A few minutes after they began to descend the mountain, however, an audible boom came from the direction of the thieves' camp. All of them looked up sharply. Connie frowned. What the hell was that? The next second, part of the rocky formation began to collapse. Armin looked at it carefully. An avalanche? He froze. Oh no.
Eren.
The others reacted in alarm. Jean readied his gear. I'll go on ahead. Scout out the situation. You guys follow behind. Okay?
Marco nodded. Yeah.
Jean slid down the side of the mountain and used his gear to begin speeding through the forest. Shit. It's bad enough he had to play hero. Now he's gonna get himself killed doing it, even before he's faced a titan. As he got near to the campsite, Jean began to slow down in case he ran into any of the thieves. He paused when he noticed someone stumbling down the forest path toward him. He perched on a branch and readied his blades in case it was an enemy. As the person got closer, however, Jean could see that it was not an enemy. It was. Jean swooped down.
Eren.
Are you okay? Eren nodded, looking slightly unsteady on his feet. Yeah, I think I'm okay. Jean looked at him uncertainly. What happened? Eren shook his head. I'm not sure. There was some kind of an explosion and then the rock wall collapsed. Most of the thieves were killed. I guess I got lucky. Jean grimaced. While he wouldn't say he was glad that the thieves were dead, he wasn't sorry either. What about our gear?
Eren Isil'zha.
I don't know. Some of it got crushed. But there may be some parts that are salvageable.
Eren inspecta Jean carefully.
I see you found my hidden gear. Jean glanced at the gear. Yeah. How did you know? Eren frowned. I just had a bad feeling. I thought it was best to. Without warning, a gunshot ripped through the night. The bullet burst through Eren's chest and whizzed past Jean's face. Eren collapsed, while Jean stumbled backwards in shock.
Eren.
The last surviving thief stepped out of the shadows and pointed his gun at Jean. Don't move. Hand over your gear. I'm not getting out of this mess empty-handed. Give it to me now. Jean raised his hands in the air. Okay. Jean could see that the thief looked extremely jumpy and panicked, and hastily began to undo his gear and toss it to the ground. The thief yelled. And hurry! The thief looked around nervously. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not staying around here any longer than necessary. Not when there's a... Suddenly, the thief stopped speaking. Jean looked up and was stunned by what he saw. Eren had somehow gotten back up, snuck up behind the thief, pushed the gun down with one hand, and wrapped his other hand around the thief's neck. In one fluid motion, Eren pulled back his arm and broke the man's neck. The thief collapsed to the ground, dead, his gun thudding against the ground. But what stood out most to Jean was Eren's eyes. They were wild, feral, looking like they burned with some primordial anger that had been hidden for a long time, only to suddenly come to life at this moment. Holy shit. Jean thought frantically. Before long, though, the fire in Eren's eyes faded, and he simply looked tired. His head drooped and he fell to the ground again. Jean rushed forward.
Eren shuklat beakli.
Guess that was pretty stupid of me. But it wouldn't be the first time, and I doubt it'll. Eren's words faded into silence. Jean glanced at the thief's corpse for a second, before carefully picking Eren up and heading back to find the others. About an hour later, Jean had found the others again, and they set up another fire to warm themselves, tend to Eren, and calm down. Mina stepped back after bandaging Eren's wound. He looks like he'll be okay. The bullet went right through him, and seems to have missed any vital organs. Jean looked at Eren's sleeping form in disbelief. He's insane. He risked his life for us, and after getting shot, the maniac still managed to get back up and...
Marco interjected.
He was just trying to protect us. It's not like he murdered him in cold blood. Jean grimaced. Yeah, I know. Doesn't make me feel any better though. You weren't there when it happened. Connie shivered. Still, it's freaky how he was able to do all that. It's like he's done this before. Connie glanced across the fire. Hey Armin. Has he ever done anything like this before? Armin remained silent, which immediately got everyone's attention. Connie's eyes widened. You mean he has? Jean and Marco looked surprised, while Krista looked slightly horrified. Sasha gasped. What happened? Armin shifted uncomfortably. I suppose you guys have a right to know, given what happened tonight, but promise me you won't tell anyone else. Okay? The others agreed, and Armin reluctantly began his story. About a year before the breach, Eren was accompanying his dad, who's a doctor, to do a house visit to Mikasa's family. Armin frowned darkly. When they got there, though, it turned out that Mikasa's parents had been murdered by sex traffickers, and they'd abducted Mikasa. The others gasped in shock at this revelation. Armin found himself unable to look at them, and focused on finishing the story as quickly as possible. Eren's father told him to wait while he went to get the police, but Eren didn't listen. Instead, he tracked them down to an old cabin in the woods where they were hiding out, and he killed them. There was total silence for a minute or two apart from the crackle of the fire. Connie glanced at the ground. Damn, Jean scowled. TCH. I guess he's always been a suicidal bastard. Krista looked at Armin sadly. How old was he when this happened? Armin hesitated. 9. Krista's eyes widened. Sasha frowned thoughtfully. And is that why Mikasa is so devoted to him? Armin nodded. Yeah, at least that's part of it.
Marco Said.
I knew that his mother had been eaten by a titan, but this, Krista stared into the fire. He did it to protect us. That's what really matters. Connie grimaced. I know. Still, Jean muttered to himself. How am I supposed to compete with that? Mina giggled slightly, and soon everyone joined in at Jean's expense, causing him to turn red. While Jean didn't appreciate the embarrassing moment, he had to admit it did help to lighten the mood a little. Eren began to stir, but instead of waking up, he began to murmur feverishly, like he was having a disturbing dream. Armin went over to him. Eren, are you all right? Say something, Eren mumbled. Must protect them. Must protect Historia. Most of the cadets were simply puzzled by Eren's words, but Krista froze. Her face lit up with shock and horror. Sasha looked at Eren uncertainly. He's saying he needs to protect us?
Marco frowned.
Well, he already did that. But who is Historia? The others seemed confused, and Krista hastily tried to feign confusion along with them. But while the rest of the cadets were able to get back to sleep before long, with Marco keeping watch this time, Krista found her mind churning, both pleased and terrified at Eren's words at the same time. The following morning, Eren woke up and seemed to be back to his usual self. After getting some breakfast, they headed back to the thieves' former campsite to see if there was anything salvageable. When they arrived, they found that the other group had already arrived. Thomas looked relieved. So, you guys are okay. Mikasa noticed Eren's bandages and rushed over to him.
Eren.
She looked at him anxiously. What happened? Armin relayed what had happened the previous night, though he left out the part where Eren had killed the thief. Mikasa looked at them all in concern. My God. You're all okay. Jean rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, we're fine. Eren should be okay too, assuming he doesn't do something else stupid. Eren grinned sheepishly. Mikasa shook her head. Eren, you reckless idiot. Eren chuckled. Sorry I worried you again. Still, I have about 10 years before a titan eats me, so there's no way I could have died here. Mikasa frowned, but the others laughed at Eren's comment. Reiner stepped forward. Glad to see you're still in one piece. Some of the gear is still good, so we better take it back with us so other thieves don't come along and finish what these guys tried to start. Thomas nodded. Good idea. The two groups dispersed and began surveying the ruined campsite to find any remaining supplies that they could. Armin looked at the collapsed rock wall and large stones strewn throughout the area with a frown. I wonder what caused the avalanche anyway? Seeing Krista was by herself, Emer jogged up to her. Emer placed a hand on her shoulder. You all right? Krista closed her eyes. Yes. Well, no. Emer tensed up. What's wrong? Krista hesitated. Well, Emer tightened her grip on Krista's shoulder. Spit it out. Krista swallowed nervously. They were going to take me as a hostage, in order to ensure the others' cooperation until they were away, but Eren insisted on going in my place. Emer whistled. Damn. Looks like I've got some competition. She frowned. But that's a good thing, isn't it? Krista shook her head. Yes, but after we brought him back to the camp, he started talking in his sleep, and he said that he needed to protect us. That he needed to protect me, but He used my real name. Emer's eyes widened. Krista looked up at Emer anxiously. And how does he know my real name? I haven't told anyone, not even you. So how? Emer grimaced darkly. I think we're going to have a little chat with Eren once we get back to base. After all the excitement, the return journey back seemed rather boring, but boring was an improvement, so the cadets appreciated it more than they had the previous day. When they arrived back, Armin headed to Shadi's office to deliver his and Mikasa's report. While Shadi's read over his report, Armin found himself thinking back to the campsite. It definitely looked like an avalanche or a rock slide, whatever you want to call it. But it's strange. What caused it in the first place? And how did it kill all of the thieves? Surely more than one should have made it out in time, especially since Eren did. And a lot of the stones were directly on top of the thieves' corpses, almost as if they were placed there on purpose. Eren's story seems to make sense, but at the same time it feels like we're missing something. Shadi's looked up. Arlert. Armin hastily saluted. Sir. Shadi's looked at him carefully. Both teams seem to have handled themselves well, considering the circumstances. Armin nodded. Thank you, sir. Shadi's hesitated. The explosion that happened right before the avalanche. Tell me, did it sound at all similar to thunder to you? Armin blinked. Yes, I suppose it did sound somewhat like thunder. Why? Shadi's leaned back. It's nothing. I was just curious. Armin frowned. Okay. Armin suspected that Shadi's also knew there was something else going on. What it was, though, Armin couldn't say for sure. The following day, Eren was heading back to the dorms when he was intercepted by Emer and Krista. Emer frowned darkly. Hey Jaeger, we need to talk. Eren looked at her warily. What about? Emer pointed her thumb at Krista. While you were out the other night, apparently you were talking in your sleep. And Krista says that you said something that you shouldn't know. Eren looked puzzled. What are you talking about? Comprehension dawned on him as he took in Krista's nervous face. Oh, Eren tried to smile reassuringly at Krista. I won't tell anyone. I doubt anyone there realized who I was talking about. Emer scowled. That's not the point. How do you know? Eren winced and started to walk away, but Emer was not going to let that stand. She grabbed him by the collar, pinned him to a nearby wall, and brought a knife to his throat. Krista gasped. Emer. Emer stared into Eren's eyes. Answer me. How do you know? Eren looked away. My father. Emer blinked. What? Eren returned her gaze. My father told me. Emer frowned. And how did your father know? Who is he? Eren shook his head slightly. We all have secrets we would rather not share with others. He looked at her seriously. Don't we, Lady Emer? Emer stumbled back, her eyes wide in disbelief. How?
Eren grimasa.
So, I guess my hunch was right. Krista looked at them both in confusion, feeling more nervous than before. She'd never seen Emer looking frightened before, and it scared her. Eren looked at Emer carefully. As with her secret, I won't divulge yours either. You have my word, Emer whispered. Who are you? Eren glanced away. I'm a friend of humanity. That's all you need to know. Eren began to walk away, and this time Emer didn't try to stop him. Krista protested. Wait. Eren stopped. Krista hesitantly continued. Please, tell me, how do you know my real name? And why did you protect me? Eren looked back at her. My father told me. As for why I protected you, it's because I intend to do everything I can to keep my comrades out of harm's way. Krista looked at him anxiously. But you didn't say the others' names. What's different about me? Eren turned around to face them again. Do you really want to know? That information could place you in grave danger. And you, Emer. Emer folded her arms. We can handle ourselves. Eren smiled wryly. Yes, I suppose you can. After checking to make sure there was no one else around, Eren looked at Krista seriously. Your bloodline is the true royal family. And that's it for today's video. I really appreciate you all taking the time to watch and join me on this journey. Your support means a lot, and it's what keeps me motivated to keep creating. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Every bit of support helps. Feel free to drop your thoughts or any suggestions for future stories in the comments. I love reading them and getting your feedback. Thanks again for being part of the community, and I'll see you in the next one.